We'll start the show in just a minute, but first, a word from our premier brand sponsor, Wheelhouse. If you want to increase your revenue and profitability, you have to have the right tools and data. And Wheelhouse has everything you need to run your short term rental business more effectively. Wheelhouse is the simplest and most powerful way to unlock your portfolio's revenue and profits. This game changing revenue management platform puts the industry's most powerful data right at your fingertips, allowing you to run your business exactly as you want to while saving you massive amounts of time. So you can have the right price every night and increase your revenue by an average of 39%. Wheelhouse is offering listeners of this podcast 50% off your first 2 months. Just go to usewheelhouse.com and enter promo code AlexAnnie at checkout, or tell them that you heard about this offer from the Alex and Annie podcast. Welcome to Alex and Annie, the real women of vacation rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we're here today with Dennis Goedheid. I hope that I'm saying that right. I know I'm not, but CEO and founder of Casiola. Dennis, can you please correct me on how I'm saying that?
I think Annie really did a great job earlier. Do you want to give it a try again, Annie?
So Dennis Goedheid?
That's perfect.
Goedheid. Okay.
I'm moving to Holland now.
Yeah.
Holland?
You should do
Holland?
the introductions from now on.
It's Belgium, isn't it? Is it Belgium?
It is Belgium.
Really?
Originally
okay.
I'm from Antwerp, but it's like 20 minutes from the Dutch border, so we share the same.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're a guest that we've wanted to have for quite some time. And this was exciting. I'm glad that we at least got to quickly catch up in Vegas last week and proposition you coming on the show finally. But for our audience that is not familiar with you and Casiola, can you give us just a little bit of your background?
Sure. So we are a vacation rental management company. So I started in 2014, acquired a small existing business with around 20 homes, all in one resort. So in the beginning, it was just me and my wife doing everything from taking calls to unclogging toilets and everything. And today we have been able to grow that business into around 350 homes, and we have 3 destinations. So we manage homes now in Orlando still, but now also in Aruba and Miami.
Wow, excellent. And you came over from Belgium, and it's only been a fairly short amount of time since you started the business, right? 2014?
Yeah, 8 years now.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible growth.
Yeah. And I met you, Dennis. I was actually at Booking Pal several years ago, and I met you, and I think at that time you had about 100, maybe 125, 150 units. And I remember you saying that your goal was to get somewhere around 350, 400 units. So you certainly are well, I guess, past the initial goal and doing really well. And your brand is very recognizable. And one of the things that Alex and I love, because we both love pink, but everywhere we go, your entire team shows up in pink. And it's just become kind of your calling card. Is that something that you intended, or it just sort of developed over time?
So it has been developing over time a little bit. Now it was a very choice that we made on purpose. So when I started into this industry, had no knowledge whatsoever about competitors and who was doing what. So I did some market research, and I just got all the keys that I could find back in the day, all on one big sheet. So I collected all the logos from the internet, them together, and I picked a color that was the most opposite of what everybody else.
I love that. What a great way to approach the branding process.
And I picked something that was the exact opposite. So, and then in the beginning we went with it. And then one day I went to a conference wearing my shirt. You know how it goes. I didn't have time to change into a suit. Went to a conference. And like a year later, someone said, "Oh, I remember you." And she didn't remember my name. She didn't remember the company name, but she just remembered the color of my shirt. She said, "Yeah, the pink shirt." And I thought by myself, oh my God, this is so strong. And that was the last day ever I have worn a suit. So from now on, you're always going to see us in those. It's not pink. It's officially magenta. But
Yes,
Oh.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
those,
I'm a little off-brand. I tried to wear magenta. This was the closest color that I had, but it's more of a hot pink. So I knew it wasn't exactly right. But
appreciate the effort, though.
yeah, we'll have to start upping our magenta wardrobe so
Yeah.
we can match you guys sometime.
Yes,
Yeah, no,
we do
that's
so.
excellent. Now, have
Yeah.
you grown through acquisitions or has it all been organic?
So we have done a few acquisitions in the first years, not really companies, but more contracts from existing managers here in Orlando, that wanted to downsize a little bit or that were focused on other areas. So we've done two very successful and one not so successful, but everything else has been through organic growth.
Wow, that's excellent. That's so cool.
So Orlando is a very large rental market, and it's hyper competitive. And one of the things that I marvel at is the number of operators that are in Orlando. That actually, I worked with several that they don't even live in the U.S. They actually live in Great Britain or they live somewhere else. So how you decided to come here and you decided to do your company, and you're based in Orlando and you've grown very well in Orlando. Like, how do you feel the landscape has changed, especially with COVID, in terms of the managers that maybe are based in Orlando or maybe based somewhere else that have, have their footprint in Orlando and their success related to that?
Mhm.
Yeah, so when I decided to move to the US, I did a little bit of market research and I found that Orlando was the biggest market in the US. So I thought, okay, even if I can just get a very tiny market share in Orlando, I'm probably okay. So I did not know that there's like 500 or 600 managers just in the Orlando. I don't know if knows the exact number, but it's so many, it's so competitive. But since I started here, I've never known anything else. So for me, this is the normal. And now with expanding into different destinations, I discovered that it can be a lot easier too in if the market is not. But I agree with you. It's for a lot of people, it's like a second career. They have had a corporate job for a long time in the UK or somewhere else, and they decide to turn around their life and do property management. They have a home themselves, or they already had a vacation home in this area, and they probably think by themselves, hey, I manage my own home, I can do this for other owners too, and that's how they start. So yeah, there's many UK property managers or Brazilian property managers
Right.
doing this here. And I think since I had a little bit of a different background, my background has been e-commerce, online marketing with my company, which was an online printing company. So we did something similar than what Vistaprint does here in the US. We did that in Europe. So all I knew basically was online marketing and e-commerce. So I applied all that know-how and knowledge that I built up over the years onto property management. And I think that was the reason, or is the reason that we have been very successful. It's not just taking care of the home, which is also important, of course, but it's the whole marketing around it, the getting bookings. We always have been focused on revenue from day one. And that is something I have the feeling that a lot of property managers in this area don't do. They are very good in taking care of the homes and the guests, but they have no clue about technology and marketing and revenue management and things like that. They do deals with tour operators. So they get a lot of bookings from them, but it's at rock bottom rates. Usually it's like a 50% discount on
Right.
rates. And we have never done that. We have not had any contract with tour operators. We always went straight to the guests, only retail bookings. And I think that really has made a difference and one of the reasons why we have been able to grow in this market.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that was a question that I had for you, was if you did work with the tour operators, because I know that's such a big segment of business in Disney. And it's something that when I was at Condo World, we never were able to get that program going, but it was something we were interested in. And I think there's a lot of interest from the UK for people that want to come and start their vacation in like South Carolina, and then, go down to Florida and maybe do kind of the East Coast kind of tour. But that's interesting that you've been able to still do that well in Orlando without that component of business.
Yeah. And I think it's easy, relatively easy for the manager, because they only need to get 1 or 2 contracts a year, and their whole calendar is almost filled. And for us, we need to go after every guest through Airbnb, through Booking.com, direct booking, communicate with them, get that sale, get them to book with us. So it's a lot more work on our end. But I think it really pays off in the end. The owners make so much more money
Right.
they would accept tour operators. And then you also see what has happened in the last few years. A couple of really big ones like the Thomas Cook went out of business. And there's companies here in the area that went bankrupt because they didn't have any money. They didn't have a direct booking strategy. They didn't have things even on Airbnb and Booking.com and Verbo, because they never needed to. And then something happened, and yeah, they got into trouble.
Yeah, that's a conversation we have with people all the time, is about, not putting all your eggs in sort of that OTA basket. You need to have it, but kind of to the point of the tour operators that went out of business. I was curious. I worked with a couple of property managers that were, unfortunately, they met their demise during COVID because they just weren't prepared. They didn't have money in the bank. But you have a fairly large portfolio, and how did you weather that? Like, I don't think anybody was prepared for what it did, but do you feel like you were as best prepared as you possibly could be? And in that, how, what would you caution others to do moving forward, so if something like that happened again, they would be prepared?
Yeah, so I have to be honest, it was a scary time. And I remember we have always been very strong on trust accounting from day one. It's not required by law here in the state of Florida.
Right.
When I first was introduced to the concept, I thought, yeah, that's absolutely smart, makes sense, we need to do it. But it was scary. I think in mid-March, we had around $2 million on our trust account in future bookings. And then the pandemic happened, and every day or hour, I saw that amount going down, and we went to a level that we only had, I think, $10,000-$15,000 left on our trust account. And calling our payment processor, asking like, hey, do you guys think we're going to have a lot more refunds coming up? Because we're almost at the bottom. So, and I said, no, we don't have anything coming up anymore. But if we had used our trust funds for other things, which happens a lot, unfortunately, in our industry, we would have been in trouble. So luckily, we had all those funds in a separate account. But still, it was scary because it didn't stop. We bleeded. I think we canceled in 1 week over 1,000 reservations.
Yeah.
It was really, really bad. And I know there has been a lot of talk around Airbnb guests. Now, we tried to rebook guests and give them a credit for exactly 3 days. And now we just gave up. We got into fights with guests. We were getting slammed on social media, getting reviews from guests who were just unhappy that they didn't get a refund. So we already started refunding our guests even before Airbnb started doing that. So for us, it wasn't really that big of a problem, because I still think that was the right thing to do at that moment. No one really knew what was going on. People were losing their jobs, and then just saying, hey, you need to keep the money with us because we you and you need to use it later on, but we don't know when yet. I don't think that was the right thing to do. So we already started refunding guests way before Airbnb did it.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
looking back, a lot of companies in our area just moved the reservations forward a year, and that helped at the time to know, okay, we're going into 2021, it's going to be a strong year. But at the same time, then what we weren't knowing was going to happen, prices changed so much, and the demand was so high in 2021 that we could have made more money if we had just
Yeah.
refunded and rebooked guests.
Exactly, and I think that has been our luck too. But no one, I mean, that wasn't the goal in the beginning because no one knew what was gonna happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, we saw some records.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about a little bit about your tech stack, because I mean, to grow a company, to have over 400 condos and homes, and that takes a lot of infrastructure to support. So what does your tech stack look like?
So we just migrated to Track last April. So
Okay.
Track is our PMS system. And on top of that, we have built also our own in-house operations tool, a little bit like what Breezeway does, but
Mhm.
there's just a lot more around it and customized for our operations. So before Track, we were on Escapia for the 8 previous years. So they had a core, they had very good accounting and reservation management, but they were lacking anything operational. So we decided, yeah, we're gonna have to build it ourselves. So we started that in yeah, I think in this year over when we got into operations. So once we switched to Track in April, only our accounting and reservations team really felt the difference. Everybody else just kept on using our internal tools and didn't notice anything about the migration. So those are the two big ones. Our own software is also an owner app, a laundry management system, housekeeping app.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. And I think I had heard that you guys had a custom, I wasn't sure if it was a custom PMS, but I knew there's some, obviously some stuff going on that you've built yourself, which is quite impressive. Now, do you have
We didn't build a
developers?
PMS, yeah, so no accounting, no reservations, no distribution, but everything
Yeah,
operational is done in-house. Yeah.
great. Now, do you have developers that support that as on your staff, or?
Yeah, so we actually have two developers now, but most of it was built by just one, and we added an additional one at the beginning of this year. So it's just done by two people.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we also use a couple of additional tools like Wheelhouse for revenue management. We use Front as our communication and group inbox tool. We have Rentals United and Booking Paul as a channel manager. So there's a couple of other tools that we use too. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Tell us a little bit about your experience with Wheelhouse. I'm curious. They're good friends of our show, and we appreciate they are our brand sponsor, and so we always like to hear a little bit more about what they do. Can you tell us about how you use Wheelhouse for revenue management?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know Wheelhouse already for a long time. From years ago, they even had a booth on VRMA, and then they kind of disappeared because yeah, they were focused on
Yeah, yeah.
operations and lyrics. So when they got back, it was very interesting. They had a couple of ideas and solutions, things that we were missing in our back then current revenue management software. So I got to start talking with Andrew and John. And the reason why we switched was really the team. It felt like a startup. They were excited to work with us. They listened to us. They made improvements, a lot of improvements already over the previous months of things that we suggested. So I really like working with companies where you're not just a number, and if you feature request, it probably never is going to happen. But people that really want to push the limits and move forward together with their customers. So I really like the smaller team and the personalized service, and that they listen to our input.
No, they just did some enhancements. They announced it at Darm when we were all in Nashville back in August. And a lot of the focus was kind of, so go back through COVID, our industry had this boom of the technology. Everybody was kind of, I think all these technology providers were able to get kind of in the weeds and really figure out what was the best technology and make a lot of advancements. So from technology within hospitality, vacation rentals has just kind of surpassed where hotels was. And in that, there was a lot of automation. And so the theme of everything was, put your information in and it'll do the work for you. And while that's, for myself, I've been in property management, OTAs, channel management, been all sides of it. I think automation is helpful, but there always needs to be a human component of it. So I think that Wheelhouse, again, with their announcement, they wanted to give some of that control back to the property manager. So I'd love to hear what you think about this new feature or kind of this new iteration of their platform and how that works for you and your team.
Yeah. So we have a full-time revenue and distribution manager on our team. So her name is Kelly, and her job is to optimize those rates for all the homes using the tools that we have available. And that was indeed one of our frustrations with the other tool that we used. It was kind of a black box. You didn't know what happened or how they came to a certain price. You could change the base prices and make some other changes, but you didn't really know what went on behind it, or why a certain date was all of a sudden priced so high, why we would not expect it to be that high. And that is the complete opposite with Wheelhouse. So they give you the data, you can look at the data, you see how they come to the conclusion that a certain night should be priced at a certain price. And you can make use your own judgment to make changes and manipulate that a little bit. So that's something that we really like. I think most managers know their market better than anyone. There's also things that we miss and that we don't know, and that's where those tools come in, because then you're really going to look at it and say, oh yeah, this event this year is on this date. I thought it was the week before. So it's for you to focus or look at certain things, so it's absolutely helpful. But there's also things that we don't know that we know and that the software may not have picked up yet. And we manage around 120 units right next to the convention center here in Orlando, and it's like a micro market within Orlando. So if you use pricing software, it may not pick up spikes because in the greater Orlando market, it's not a big event. But for those 120 units right next to the convention center, it's huge. And that's why we have been outperforming a lot of other managers, because they didn't really pay attention to it. They knew that Christmas was high and spring break.
Yeah, I think that's valuable, because Orlando is a market where you have to be in tune with not only the vacation rental and kind of the calendar, the typical calendar, like you said, the holidays when families are traveling, but it is a convention market. And as conventions come back and it starts to get back to some normalcy that, Orlando would drive that business, you have to understand what the hotels are pricing and what the conventions are and what they have a, huge tennis facility that's there in the market. My husband likes to go down there and he's played in some tournaments there. And so there's so much going on in Orlando that if you're not really looking at the whole picture and grabbing data, or again, knowing that you're there on kind of boots on the ground situation, you're going to know better than the software. And I do think that that's where some of the platforms have missed out. So I really applaud Wheelhouse for really giving some of that back to the manager, because again, there is some gut that goes with it, but there's also just some practical knowledge that a computer system is not going to be able to scrape if they're not, they can't see it all. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I think managers like yourself, that you guys are obviously pretty tech savvy, and to make different suggestions to them and for them to take those suggestions to heart and implement within the software. It's nice to work with companies like that. I mean, if you guys are doing your own things, you're going to see things differently than just the regular property manager that, might not be, quite as savvy. So it's really cool seeing technology evolve in our industry, and just especially in the last couple of years, just how much we've all kind of contributed to that. And, a lot of this technology is built by, like you said, you've probably known Andrew for a long time, people that we all know. And I think that's kind of helped all of us grow and evolve together.
Yeah. it's always amazing to see every year at a conference like PRMA, all the new technologies that pop up that you've never heard of or thought about, and then
Yeah.
there's a vendor, and then you see them the next year, and they're bigger, or they disappear,
Or they're gone completely. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, and I know in the beginning, like the exhibit hall at VRMA it was always the same PMS systems, and
Yeah.
yeah, every year you already knew who was going to be there, and now
Right.
it's new, fresh, small startups, and that's great. That's what I love about these conferences.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say, what's the biggest pain point in your business right now? Like what's the thing that keeps you up at night?
Huh, I think staffing is a challenge still for us, finding them, retaining them, especially for frontline workers. Everybody in this market is dealing with it from a Disney to hotel.
Yeah.
It has gotten easier, but it has been one of the hardest years, I think. Yeah, since we started. I 2021 was probably harder than 2020 when we were under lockdown with COVID, because you had that surge in bookings and guests staying in our homes, and people were still not working, and they were getting $600 or more a week in unemployment, which is more or the same that they would be earning, like cleaning homes or inspecting homes. So that has been a really, really tough year for us. Also, our review scores went down. We have guests arriving at a property, and the housekeepers still had to get there and start. That's how bad it was. So I think that has been a big challenge, but I think it's going in the right direction. It's getting a lot easier. If we post a job app now, a few months ago we were not getting any response whatsoever, and now finally we start to see some resumes coming in.
Yeah. How about regulations? Orlando is a market that I haven't heard too much about regulations. I think the greater Orlando area is pretty in tune with the fact that tourism, regardless of where it's coming from, is incredibly important to the entire ecosystem of Orlando from one end to the other. But you said you're now managing in other markets. Miami is a market that there's a lot of push for regulation. So how are you seeing the landscape within Florida and then the markets that you're working in? And I think you said you've got some in the Caribbean as well. What are your thoughts on where regulation goes and how property managers should be proactively engaging on that subject?
Yeah. So I think it's a big misconception that Orlando is the Wild West and that you can do whatever you want because Orlando is actually very regulated, but I think it's done in the right way. So in everybody talks about Orlando, but it's actually 4 different counties that make up the area around Disney World, and in Orlando, short-term rentals are not permitted. So you can have a guest in your house on Airbnb, but the owner has to be in the house during the stay of the guest. So you cannot rent out entire homes unless you're in a community that's zoned for short-term rentals. And I think that's really key. What they've done here, they have built communities, purpose-built communities where you only have short-term rentals. So there's a lot less of a mix between residents and short-term rentals. Then you have Osceola County, which is what they call the vacation home capital of the world. They even trademarked that baseline. And they saw already, like I think 10 or 20 years ago, that they could not compete with Orange County in Orlando with all the hotels and resorts that they had. So far back in the past, they decided to focus on vacation rentals. Their tax tourist development tax collections from vacation homes are higher than what they get from hotels. So for them, obviously, it's also a very important part of the local economy. It pays for a lot of their expenses. So it's all regulated. You need to apply for licenses. You need taxes, but it's streamlined and they're open to it. So they embrace it. So that's great. So regarding Miami, yeah, we know it's a very tough market there, regulation wise. But it's almost the same there. You have buildings that are zoned for short-term rentals. So as long as you stay there, there's no issues. But obviously you cannot do it anywhere you want. You have to focus on those buildings or zones where it's allowed. And each, yeah, in general, it's not allowed. So, but other areas in Miami, there is no problem. And then for Aruba, that's probably like the most dangerous situation because there are no rules yet. Uh,
Mm.
and that's when things can really change. They can, yeah, block you overnight. They can pass a law that puts you out of business. So there we really have been proactive. When we started there with a local partner, the first thing I told them is we need to start a coalition here. There may not be a problem today, but one day we're gonna have a problem because there are no rules. So we formed the Aruba Vacation Rental Professionals with support also. And we organized a summit. We did an economic impact study. We organized a summit. We invited all the politicians from there. And that has really worked great because now they actually send a request for proposal to us to come up or advise them on some softwares to collect their tourist development taxes. And that is really what you want, that they don't go on their own and they find a system that may not work for us, but
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
now they're asking us for advice. Hey, what would you do? Which systems would you use? Which systems are used in other counties in the US? And that's exactly what our goal was. And yeah, getting ahead of the game and not having to be reactive when it's too late.
That's excellent and so good to hear. And I think that's a
Yeah.
conversation that's being had in a lot of communities right now, at least starting on the vacation rental side, that we're all trying to get to that point of, okay, let's, instead of the cities, investing in software that's not going to help with, tracking these issues, let's all work together and figure out what we're actually trying to track. Because I think there's so much misinformation about what the real problems are. And obviously you've seen our we are not Airbnb movement, and it's not about Airbnb, but it's about saying who we are as a industry. And it's a rallying cry. And I think that we're going to start
That's
to
the funny thing in Aruba, for example, we are pushing for regulations, and that may sound weird, but we know the issues that guests have are like noise, trash, and parking
yeah.
issues. So we want to have clear regulations, and we propose those to them so that they would go with our regulations and not come up with ideas from owners or neighbors. So if we can lock those in, the ones that we support, and we probably gonna have to give them something too. But if we can push for our proposal, then we're probably gonna be better off than if we have to fight back on proposals from neighbors.
Yeah. Did you guys use, or did you engage with, you said VRMA helped you with that. And I'm just curious because the way you're talking about kind of getting everybody together, bringing all the stakeholders together, that's something that Rent Responsibly has really concentrated on and putting together, making sure that, again, the people that live in the community, the people that work in the community, the people that have the business in the community, that everybody is getting together at the table to have the conversation. So did you engage with them, or is this something that you kind of instinctually knew what needed to be done, and then VRMA stepped in to help you with that?
Yeah, so we did not engage them. We worked with Matt Curtis, who has been with VRMA for
Right.
before. So he has helped us and guided us a little bit through the process. But there's also a lot of things that we already knew, of course, and it's also important who you know, especially in a small community like Aruba. Everybody knows everybody, and
Yeah.
the network is almost more important than what you do, because you need to get it to the right people.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think that some people forget. I know I look back at when I was in property management back in the early 2000s up to about 2012. And in the market that I'm in is in the panhandle of Florida, Panama City Beach, but there's Panama City Beach, there's Destin, 30A, there's the whole panhandle. And it was very siloed in the way people operated. There was not a lot of collaboration, not a lot of sharing information. And even within the Panama City Beach market, I remember just trying to get data to understand what was really out there. There was a lot of friction between the hotel sector and vacation rentals because they were starting to take over they were the bulk of the inventory in the market. And so, the Convention and Visitors Bureaus, the DMOs started to have to pay attention, but they didn't know how to do it. And so I think that COVID, all the bad that came with it, the really great thing that came out of it is it made the industry so much more collaborative and so much more understanding that we are this large community that is spanning the globe, really, and that we are going to be so much stronger and so much better if we all work together instead of working against each other. So I think that when you're showing exactly that, you're being collaborative in a market that, like Orlando, enormous market, but you've proven out that working those relationships and being right there and understanding the market is important to the success, not just for you as Casiola, but for the industry as a whole.
Absolutely, I agree. And even here in Orlando, we also formed like a small association with our top 5 competitors. Basically, we have monthly calls, and we just share information. And that can go about certain software, or where do you get your benefits, what do you pay employees, just to benchmark things. If you have a certain problem, do the others have the same problem, or is it something that you have to look? So having that call every month, gives so much value. Doesn't cost anything. We also want to limit it to just a handful of other property managers, because if like 20 or 30, it's just too big. So it's just 5 of the top property managers in Orlando, and I love those conversations each month.
Yeah, and having that group that you can bounce ideas off of is huge. And we talk about that quite a bit on our show, just the value of collaboration and co-opetition, however you want to phrase it. But at the end of the day, we're really all more aligned, and we need to be able to work together within our own destinations. And it used to be the information sharing was just something that didn't happen, but I think people like yourself have really just kind of moved the needle on making others understand that it's okay to to share and work together on things.
Yeah, we all get better of it. So absolutely could recommend.
Yeah. Now, I have one other question, Dennis. I know you've been you've built a really great culture, I think, at Casiola, and that's what I've heard from the outside, which that's a good thing for y'all. But tell us a little bit about the culture and how important that has been, especially with workforce issues that we're all facing.
It's something. From my experience with my previous company, we had an amazing culture. So we even went to a company called Zappos. You may be familiar with it.
Yeah.
And the headquarters were in Vegas. And I'm talking about many, many years ago, even before they were acquired by Amazon. And they were really known for their cultures and their happy hours, and their office looked like a crazy place. Every desk was like decorated in the most insane ways. So we went there. We did like a culture boot camp, I think is what they called it, for a few days. And now
that's so cool.
To our company in Belgium, and we started organizing like happy hours every week or every month. 2 people within the company that got randomly picked, so it could be someone from maintenance together with someone from marketing, for example. They have to organize something for the whole team on a limited budget, so they have to be creative. They have to work together with someone that they usually don't work with, and it's just fun to create those activities that we introduced here too. We call it the CCC, the Casiola Crew Celebration. So we do it every month or after busy season, because like in March, April, we cannot do that in the middle of spring break, but then we do it right after. And those things are really fun. I think everybody gets stressed, especially if you have gone through a busy summer and you need some time to release together and recharge. Actually, last time we did, we took the whole team to Disney World. So they could go to any park they wanted in the morning, and then we met up at 2 p.m. at Epcot, and we did a food and wine festival with the whole
Nice.
That's awesome.
drinking
Yeah.
around the world.
Yeah, that's always good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fireworks, and it was so much. It was a little bit too much fun because the day of, and I'm not kidding you. So we did. It's a ride. It's called Living with the Land. It's actually a very boring educational ride. And someone complained, so they reached out to us through social media that we were making too much noise and fun, and that they couldn't hear staying on the speakers. And they took a video, and they looked up Casiola. So
Oh no.
Oh my gosh, you guys are troublemakers.
I apologize for that guest, but that means that we had a bunch of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what it's about at the end of the day. And it's great to hear that you do team building stuff like that, because it really does. It's you, in order to make things happen in the business, you have to have trust in each other. And I think that happens normally outside of the business, that you just get to know and break bread and enjoy each other's company. So that's great.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Dennis, I think we're getting near time, and at the end of it, we like to normally ask a couple of questions. We did not send them to you, so this might be what you consider as your gotcha moment. But what would you? You've been here. I don't know, how long have you been in the U.S. now?
8 years.
Okay, so what would you tell Dennis of 10 years ago today? Like if you had to go back and say, this is what you need to be prepared for when you move to the US, what would be those things?
Don't go into property management.
That is
crazy.
so funny. My husband and I started a property management company here, like right when the economy crashed in 2008, 8, whenever that was. I can't even remember. It seems like it's so long ago, but we, with some friends, and we joked about, he handled marketing and I handled like the owner relations and contracting and all that stuff. And we always joked that we were going to buy t-shirts that said, friends don't let friends buy condos. But I think you could say friends don't let friends buy vacation rentals, but to your point, I think it's one of those things you get into it and it's like, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? But you wouldn't change it for the world because you clearly love what you're doing.
Absolutely, and that's the weird thing about what we do. It becomes like a passion or an addiction. You hate it, you love it.
Right.
You hate it, especially at 2 a.m. at night when you get a call. You love it, yeah, at conference like the VRMA, or if you do those team buildings, or you see people guests that have the vacation of a lifetime, taking their kids or grandkids to the theme parks. So yeah, it's an addiction, but and I had some business experience before, so it's not that I got into something new, but this is hard. So everyone that has a small management company, for just husband and wife, and I've been doing it for 10 or more years, I have so much respect for them, because this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I ran businesses all across Europe and North Africa. We had production, we had e-commerce, we had people all around Europe, but this is 10 times harder. Running operations is so hard. Dealing with owners, it's not easy. So yeah, a lot of respect for those smaller players that do everything and that are basically on call 24/7.
Yeah, it's a lot harder business than what people are, or some people are making it seem like it is. It's not a passive income stream kind of business, but it's very hands-on and a lot of work, but especially at scale with as many units as you guys have.
Yeah. Well, Dennis, thank you so much for joining us. We love watching the Casiola team at conferences. I mean, you guys, you clearly take your team building and your culture, and you bring it to the shows, and the energy is it's electric, and I think people really gravitate to it. So just keep it up. And so if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
You can reach me through LinkedIn, I think is easy, or you can contact Casiola, and I'm sure they will forward your message to me.
Great.
Awesome. We will include those links in the show notes. And if anybody wants to contact Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. And if you're enjoying the show, we'd love to hear from you. If you could leave us a review on whichever podcast app that you listen to, we'd greatly appreciate that. But until next time, Dennis, thank you so much. And we will see everyone later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.